And that, by the way, is what the whole world is concerned about, bumping into Omicron, but not the Western media. Instead of looking ahead, they're digging up the past, not because it's interesting, but because it suits their agenda. This time, it's Bloomberg. They have revisited India's second wave of Wuhan virus infections, what we now call the Delta wave. It's less of an article and more of a smear piece. Just look at the headline. This is what it says: how errors and inaction sent a deadly COVID variant around the world. You read that headline and you know what's coming below. It's basically a hit job on India's pandemic response. Remember, we're talking about a traumatic period. Some of us lost loved ones. Some of us lost our jobs. But Bloomberg doesn't seem to care about any of that. They're angry and frustrated. Why? Because thanks to India, they cannot party on New Year's. That's basically what the article says. Rhetoric aside, what is their argument? How exactly did India send a deadly variant around the world, as Bloomberg puts it? Through inaction, apparently. Bloomberg says the Indian government was slow and ineffective. They delayed genome sequencing, they ignored scientists, and they let the Delta variant spread. That's what the article says. But Delta was not the only variant, or was it? We had Alpha, Beta, Gamma, and now Omicron. Were these variants flagged immediately? Well, we have some data. Let's find out. The Alpha variant emerged in September 2020. When was it reported? December 2020. The Beta variant emerged in May 2020. When was it reported? December 2020. Almost 6 months later, Gamma was slightly better, emerged in November in Brazil, reported in January 2021. But it was not Brazil that reported it. Gamma variant was flagged by Japan's National Institute of Infectious Diseases. Where does India figure on this list? The Delta variant emerged in October 2020. Back then, it was called the B1617. And when did India flag this? The first genome sequence was submitted to the international community in the month of February this year. By the month of March, Indian states were locking down again. Remember, all of this was happening after vaccination began. Every other variant came before the vaccine: Alpha, Beta, Gamma, all of them. So the focus was on tracing and treatment. Delta came after the vaccine, so the Indian government was more focused on vaccinations, on preventing COVID-19. Could this process have been done quicker? Could India have done more genome sequencing? In hindsight, sure, it could have. But as we just showed you, every country took around 2 to 3 months in flagging variants. So did India. But there were only two key differences. One, India's massive population. More people equals more infections, and more infections equals more mutations. That's difference number one. Difference number two is the nature of Delta. Every variant is a matter of concern, but Delta turned out to be much more transmissible and deadly. Plus, we just started vaccinations. So what exactly is Bloomberg blaming India for? Having a large population? Or for reporting a deadly variant? Telling the world about it? Let's keep the logistics aside for a moment. Let's focus on the literature, the language of this article. It's vindictive and snobbish. I'm going to read out some parts of it, and I'm quoting: the actions India did and did not take as Delta emerged ultimately saddled its people and the world with a ruthlessly virulent incarnation of the coronavirus. There's more, and it gets more interesting. Delta upended even the most successful pandemic strategies, snaking into countries like Australia and China with stringent zero COVID curbs in place and effectively closed borders. So China had a successful pandemic strategy. Sure it did. If hiding a virus and fudging numbers counts, I guess China was successful. This article basically blames India for extending the pandemic. Your lockdowns are India's fault. Omicron is India's fault. As I said, vindictive and snobbish. India has exported millions of vaccines all over the world. Despite having 1.3 billion people at home, India continued to export medical supplies. And what did it get in return? The West hoarded vaccine ingredients right when India needed them. I'm not saying India's pandemic response was perfect. The numbers will give you the right picture. But to blame India for extending the pandemic is not right. Every country tried, so did India. And if Bloomberg is adamant on finding someone to blame, how about looking at China? But something tells me their editors will not like this pitch. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.